Newzroom Afrika's Ziyanda Ngcobo has been keeping a close eye on those deliberations around the Government of National Unity. And in fact, she joins us in studio to discuss what some of the important issues are that we need to consider. Great to see you as always. Thanks for coming in, Ziyanda. And I suppose, given yesterday's announcement in Gauteng by the Premier, MichelleL Craig, the fact that it was postponed indefinitely an hour before he was meant to announce his Gauteng executive, it says something about what's happening at national level.
Definitely. It tells us two things immediately. It tells us that what's being negotiated at a national level, we finally have somewhat of a confirmation that it's going to cascade at a provincial and a local government level. It also then speaks to the fragility of the talks. We saw, MichelleL Craig actually having to come out on social media to seem to be dispelling what he says is misinformation around why that briefing was postponed. He even went as far as saying that the negotiators asked for more time. So there's clearly a link between whatever's being discussed at national that will have an impact on, the governments of provincial unity, and even at a local government level. Even this week, tomorrow, in fact, we're yet to see if, the eThekwini Council will also be able to appoint a new mayor. And this is important because of how the negotiations have been unfolding and the various demands that parties have been making. So we're told, for instance, that the Democratic Alliance wants to have more, dominance in the local government sphere. Now, it would seem at this stage, Michelle, that there's a lot of bargaining, but still, they claim that they're doing it on behalf of citizens, but I mean, it's also looking towards the 2026 local government elections and the interests of each individual party. But we've seen now, as we keep seeing signatories getting onto this Government of National Unity, that it would seem that the ANC is trying to accommodate everyone to sort of have a more national picture. Remember, Michelle, at this stage, we don't know what mandate, these parties are negotiating on. There's no real national program that has been outlined since the, national election. And it was interesting to hear then the UDM's Bantu Holomisa, who was initially a part of the Progressive Caucus in Parliament, shifting to the Government of National Unity. And he denies strongly that this was a betrayal. Let's listen to what he had to say.
That the ANC has not closed doors with other political parties, all of them. So tomorrow I wouldn't be surprised, or day after, or even next week or next month, that some of the parties which said they won't be part of this would join the GNU. So the bilateral discussions are continuing between the political parties, among the political parties, especially with the ANC as individuals. So the Progressive Caucus is not a one party. We meet when we feel that the gaps, we can narrow the gaps, when there's a common interest. But each party is independent.
Very interesting what he has to say there about the ANC keeping the doors of communication open with all political parties, right? And that is, it's very true. And the party that comes to mind with their, you'll correct me, Ziyanda, 38 seats in the National Assembly is MK. Absolutely. I mean, who's to say that the MK party may not also form the Government of National Unity? Remember, there's still a lot of debate, in particular from MK party. We heard during that briefing 2 Sundays ago, where former President Jacob Zuma was defining this as a grand coalition and not a Government of National Unity. That is the main foundation upon which they're saying they won't join this arrangement. And I think if you look at how they've been managed to get the consensus building, which is what it seems what the ANC is trying to do in terms of getting parties like the UDM on board, getting other parties, that were forming part of this Progressive Caucus on board. It's also, I guess, to also balance out this perception that it's the ANC-D and IFP who founded this and that they're inviting everybody else. Right. We heard Dumseni Ntuli speaking about that to say that they are the leading party
party in this, and everybody has been invited, and that they're all equal. And this then complicates, the announcement of a cabinet, which is why we know, according to the Constitution, that there isn't a stipulated period within which the president has to announce his cabinet. But there's so much to consider now. There's a reduction in posts now. It would seem, we saw the Sunday papers reporting, that it would seem the DA would get less posts in cabinet because to accommodate this. We've just seen a COSATU briefing a short while ago where the alliance partners are also saying that the president must consult them and that if they are to work with the DA, they need to let go of their anti-worker stance, which goes back to the point about a program of action that has to be outlined before even speaking about posts. And that's exactly the point that the ATM's of Zungula made this morning.
Parties have got different influences and their reasoning why they would want to join the coalition of the ANC. In our view, as those independent parties, they are more than welcome to do what they feel is best for their own parties. But for us as a party, as ATM, we believe that we can't be part of a coalition with the ANC and other parties, precisely because the statement of intent is not enough, because what is needed now is that to form government. And to form government, you need to have a clear program of action for the next 5 years. Up until today, the ANC has not provided any clear guidelines on a program of action for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and just a quick correction there. Of course, the MK party has 58 seats in Parliament and not 38. We're thinking of the EFF, which has 38 seats in the National Assembly. So Vuyo Zungula talks about this program of action. And the way these negotiations have been running over the past couple of weeks, Ziyanda, we haven't been privy to it. We're privy only to...
Which is part of the problem,
precisely. That's another,
that's another conversation
about the fact that it should be happening in public. But this program of action that Vuyo Zungula talks about, I mean, all parties can be accused of not having sat down. You and I, before coming on air, talked about having a national dialogue about what it is that we need to be achieving as a country. Who is the best place to run the police ministry, the health ministry, rather than falling back into the issue of effectively cadre deployment, right? Because now it's just about, I want these cabinet portfolios as the DA or as the ANC or whichever party it is. And we should have, as our party, we should have a representative there. Never mind who's best placed for the position.
Exactly. And this is why then the president did mention it when he was elected in the National Assembly. And I think he repeated it again during last week's inauguration, that a national dialogue needs to take place. Because of how fragmented the outcome of the elections was, you need to ensure that you're taking all citizens on board, regardless of your own individual political party ambitions or interests. And in order to truly reflect the nation's mood, in order for as well, for whatever arrangement that you have, for it to actually be deemed as legitimate and to also, ensure that the nation is rallying behind one vision. Now, because these talks are happening behind closed doors, because we actually don't know what program these parties are rallying around, and there are clauses that are being bandied about, hence that confusion between Fikile Mbalula and Helen Zille. We actually have no real idea of what is being negotiated and for
on
what,
our behalf,
and for what purpose. And so this is why then there's still this debate. Is it a grand coalition? Is this, a GNU? The fragility of these talks, how sustainable will this marriage be? If one person decides to pull out, because some have been arguing that the way the ANC is moving and their insistence that they're keeping the door open is to also ensure that if the DA then decides, look, we're going to go back to the opposition benches, this thing that we tried out is not working, that they still have the numbers. You still, at the end of the day, realistically speaking, you also need the numbers to be able to pass certain legislation. And I think that's the point that the UDM's Bantolo Misa was making, to say that we actually need to know, let's merge all the manifestos to see, because if the UDM is there, I mean, he said, I'm not going to go and implement an ANC manifesto which got them to 40%. And so this is exactly the point about having a national program that everyone believes in, that's representative of that outcome of the 29th of May.
Fair to say that we're all waiting with bated breath for the outcome of these negotiations. Ziyanda Ngcobo, thanks as always for coming into studio. Ziyanda is still keeping a close eye on those negotiations, and of course, anything we hear, we'll bring it to you first here on 405.